Hi everybody, welcome to the Eclectic Readers Club. This is kickstarting the whole group. This is it's my little brainchild that is totally out of my comfort zone because I've never liked to get up in front of people and speak or do anything or, heaven forbid, make videos. But I am giving it a go. In our own community, I'm just looking for some other things for some of the homeschooling kids to do, including my son. So we're going to try this one out. And if you're doing it at home, you can do it by yourselves. You can do it with some friends, or you can make your own group, do it in a homeschool co-op, whatever works for you, but you do not have to follow at our pace. The idea is it's do it yourself, but it is guided. So there's going to be ideas for things you can do in meetings, and you've got the themes. The themes you can follow along with, but you don't have to do them in the same order or even do them all. If you just want to pick one here or there that speaks to you, or if you're doing at a slightly different pace, that's fine. Our themes are drawn randomly. We've just thrown all the genres in one jar, and we have all the topics in the other jar, and the kids just pick them as we go. So that's how we wind up with what we're reading. The idea is just get out there and explore, try some different types of books. And if you come back and say, this didn't work for me and I didn't like it, that's perfectly okay. I just want you to try. So try at least one. And just as a starting point, like if you're going to a library looking for a book along the genre, that's where I thought it would be fun to have the topic. It's just a bonus challenge. It is not the required reading like the genre is. But if you walk in and say, we're doing fiction this month, help, that's a lot of turf. So I thought it would be a fun little challenge to throw a topic in there where instead you might walk in going, we're doing fiction and we're studying animals. What do you recommend? Just to give you some way to narrow it down. Now, sometimes we're probably going to wind up with some pretty interesting mixes, but we'll see where it takes us, right? That's part of the fun of it all. So for our initial meeting, we are just going to be talking about favorites, since we're not drawing ahead of time. So at our group, I just asked everybody to bring their favorite book. So for me, I tried to think, what would I bring? Well, I'm a lot older than everybody else there, right? So I actually tried to span the years where I picked out a favorite book from being a child. And then I kind of tried to go roughly teenish years. And then as an adult. I had a really hard time narrowing it down. I think I actually wound up with 4 books finally. I think it was young child, slightly older kid, teenage to young adult, and then adult. So for me as a kid, one I remember was Paddington. I did love Paddington Bear. And then a few years later, when I was around 8, I read Watership Down by Richard Adams. And that book, oh my gosh, I don't know how many times I read it, but I absolutely loved that book. And then when I was probably about 15, I read the book Illusions by Richard Bach. And it inspired me so much. I mean, I read all his books. And I actually enrolled in ground school to get my pilot's license due to that book. So books can really move us if they hit us at the right point in the right time. Now, ironically, I recently ran across that book in a little library nearby to us. So I picked it up and brought it home and started reading it and went, huh. I'm not at that point in my life anymore, it seems. It actually wasn't very good and I didn't get through it. So it's funny what the right book at the right time can do in our lives. I'm going to try at some point to get through it, but I'm not there yet. So then from my adult life, I went back, it's been a year or two ago, that I read American Wolf. I think that's by Nate Blakesley, if I remember correctly. That book is amazing. These days, pretty much all I read is nonfiction, and I really, really like nature and science books, especially nature. I'll do some travel too, and sometimes biography, but that nature science niche, that's kind of where I stay. So American Wolf was about the reintroduction of wolves in Yellowstone, and growing up, wolves were my favorites. And I didn't realize I was reading this book that right about the time that wolves were my thing, and, all my notebooks, not stuff all had wolves on them. That was right about the time the wolves were getting reintroduced, which I found really interesting. But this particular book, it just hit all my emotions, and that's why it was a favorite. It's not a favorite in the way that necessarily books were favorites when I was a kid. With this one, it was just the way it made me feel. I mean, this book made me laugh. It made me cry. It made me mad. It hit every single button, and it was almost exhausting by the end of it, but in such an amazing way. Like, when something touches you like that, you remember it. And so that's why I picked that one as my favorite. But so then when we're talking about favorites, one thing I was pointing out with the kids is that a favorite book does not necessarily mean a favorite author. Now, as I said about Richard Bach, I read them all. I don't think there's anything he wrote that I did not read. Anything I could get my hands on, I read by that man. I started with Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and then I just kept going from there, especially after Illusions. Whereas I don't think I read many by Michael Bond, who does Paddington. And then with Richard Adams, I was actually an adult before I read a second book by Richard Adams. When I was young, I found them pretty dry. Honestly, as an adult, I can find them pretty dry to get through. So it took me, until my 30s, I think, to read a second book by him. And then with American Wolf, I have read his other book, which was also good, but not in the way that American Wolf was good. I'm like, it was a fine, solid read, but not like that book was. So again, there's going to be a difference between your favorite book and your favorite author sometimes. I have authors I absolutely love that I will go to anytime they have a new book. Like Tor Hansen, I love his writing. Doesn't necessarily mean he has my very favorite book, but I love him as an author. So there can be a big difference sometimes between your favorite author and your favorite book. And sometimes it's about the time in our life. So that's something to think about, is look back on your reading career and ask yourself, is there an author I've read again and again and again and again and again? Did they happen to author my favorite book? And did I have a favorite book at this point in my life that now I'm like, not so great? It's an interesting thing to sort of think back and go, what are my favorites? What were my favorites then? What are my favorites now? How are they different? Has it changed? Or have I had some that have stayed with me and I still love? So think about it, roll it around, and in the meantime, keep reading, keep exploring, and stay curious. We'll see you for month 2. Welcome to the Eclectic Readers Club.